friends, welcome to the Heroes Majority, our first stream. Hooray!
Ray, what's up,
Um,
guys?
my name is Chuk, and I'm joined here by my friend Steven.
Hey, what's up, guys?
So, Steven and I have been playing Heroes of the Storm since late in the beta. Uh, we've we started playing with each other pretty soon after that. Actually, it was during the preseason when numbered ranks were still a thing. 1 through 50. So that was fun.
1 through 50. And you could do Duo Hero League, the good old days.
Yeah. So, right now we're both in kind of gold Hero League. So, I know a lot of you know what that's what that's like, and it can be fun or it can be super toxic, but that's these games.
Yeah. I think the hardest part about it, too, is that there's just such a large amount of people that are in our rank that you get such a wide player base, even just within our small group. And that can be frustrating.
And that brings us to kind of why we're doing this stream, right? We have 75% or 77% of the player base in bronze, silver, and gold leagues, and not everyone is fully aware of some of the nuances of the game, of how to draft certain things. A lot of the more precise, the more difficult stuff like that. And we'd like to, discuss these things with everyone and find a meta that's more suited to our ranks than, say, to those people that we always watch on Twitch, like Moonfares, like Nubkex, like Grubby.
Although they're really good players and they're a lot of fun to watch. Sometimes it just doesn't apply to us, you know what I mean? Because sometimes you see that they say, oh, this character's busted, this character's so good, like, how can you not play him? And then we try him, and we don't do so well. Like Genji, when Genji first came out, yeah, he wrecked in higher leagues, but in our league, it's just he's such a high skill cap character that unfortunately, we weren't getting much value out of him. And then on the opposite end of things, you kind of have someone like Kael'thas, where gets super punished in higher leagues, and then in our league, he just kind of will run wild if you don't know how to deal with him. It's a bit of a pain sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's enough about us. Let's get on to kind of our main segment, kind of what we're going to be doing every week. So we're going to try and start off every week with a new segment, just looking over patch notes, what's been posted by other people lately, and we want to put our thoughts out into the community and get the community's thoughts on these on the recent news.
Yeah, just kind of keep everyone updated, because it's not always fun to read through the patch notes, so sometimes it's a little easier just to hear it. Even if you listen while you're just driving, or when you're at home, when you're making dinner, maybe you can pick up on the patch notes, and when you're done, you can just go pick up the game and not have to worry about reading through a bunch of different changes. So I'll let Chuck actually handle the patch notes for now.
Cool. So this last week, we actually saw some huge changes. We saw buffs to some characters that haven't seen play in what feels like forever. For example, Falstad, he's the first one on the list. They buffed his talent, two of his talents at level 1 that weren't getting picked as often, Gathering Storm and Wingman. And they also buffed his updraft at level 4, his barrel roll ability.
Yeah,
I think
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him. I was a big fan of him before. I just think the reason he kind of fell off a little bit was he gets a little boring. He's just an old school character, you know. He's never, I don't ever think he's not been good.
He can feel kind of heavy, kind of bulky in some fights, especially now with characters like Genji and Tracer running around. They're super flighty, which is what he used to feel like, but now when you put him into perspective of into the perspective of the current meta, he just feels kind of fat. But enough about the general idea of him. I think buffing his Gathering Storm quest at level 1 is huge. He used to be pretty mana dependent when he went this build, and I think this is a good way of managing that.
Yeah.
Returning 10 mana every time you hit a hero.
Yeah, and being that it costs 70 mana, that's pretty intense. Me personally, although I think it's good, I still think you want to go Seasoned Marksman in most cases. Wingman's good. I've actually tried it a lot, but I find that it's hard to kind of get value out of that until like around level 10, because you don't have enough stacks to bribe a camp, so it's almost not worth doing it.
Yeah, but I feel like sometimes, like, I like Gathering Storm when you need some of that kill potential, some of that like extra burst, because without without Gathering Storm, it feels like it can be kind of hard to finish someone off. You're just hoping and praying that they stay in range long enough for you to get them.
Yeah. I am trying to find it. I can't find it right offhand, but Pro Player actually just did something on Falstead before the changes came out that I thought was really good. If I can find it, I'll pull it up on screen for you guys so you guys can find it.
Was that recent highlighted story on the launcher?
Yes, sir. Yes, it was. If I can find it, I would love to post it. It was really good. I read the article, and it was pretty applicable to most people. Well, I can't find it, but that's okay. I pretty much remember it. So he recommended Seasoned Marksman. So if you find it, it should be on the news section of your Blizzard launcher. If you find it in there, it's definitely worth reading. I would recommend it.
Well, then moving away from Falstad, the big news of the week is Fenix. The Fenix nerfs that everyone's been waiting for. I say thank God. I think this put him in a good place.
Yeah.
He's still very strong, but he doesn't feel... It doesn't feel like I have to just run away every time he shows up.
Yeah, just because he was so punishing. He could splash you from long range and melt you when you got up close. What were the changes actually? I don't know offhand exactly what the changes were.
So some pretty significant nerfs to his level 1 talent. They reduced his maximum damage bonus when you finish the quest. They reduced the amount of bonus you get each time you hit his Q. So now instead of having to get 100 stacks, you have to get, what's that, 120. But also the amount of stacks you need, the amount of bonus damage you need in order to get the additional circle, the additional ring on your Q didn't change. So now you still need to get 30 damage, but instead of, getting 0.75 damage per stack, you're only getting 0.5. So now that actually also has gone up, the number of hits required to proc that.
Cool.
And I think that's a good thing.
Did they mess with his health at all? Do you know?
They did not. His health and his shields have not changed.
Really? Interesting. I was going to say, because
they nerfed his basic attack.
I noticed when
Plasma Cutter, Planet Cracker. Planet Cracker actually got buffed.
Oh, cool. Darth plays him a lot. Our friend Darth, he plays him a lot, and I noticed that he always goes the Circle Cutter build and gets himself in trouble, so I didn't know if they'd nerfed his health or shield, how much this would affect him, make him a little easier to kill.
No, I mean, Fenix has always been kind of easy to kill, and that's something that I've heard reflected in the upper echelon. We saw it last week in Pro Play over the weekend. A lot of the pros was just saying, we'll let Fenix through because we can just dive and kill him.
Yeah.
And I think in Pro Play that's absolutely true. But for Hero League, and especially for low tier Hero League, for Bronze, Silver, Gold, it's not that easy to dive and kill him because you put yourself at risk, and that's not comfortable.
Yeah, that's scary. Yeah, I do notice one thing, and when I play against Phoenixes, people that are not very good Phoenixes will actually take a ton of damage because they don't see their health going down, and will actually get their own shield depleted playing a little too aggressive. So that's usually a good time to dive back in on them, is when you're watching his shield without putting yourself in danger and you see him get to about like an eighth of a shield left. It should be a pretty good, that would be a good time to dive in on him, I think.
Speaking of Phoenix's shield, I really wish there was. I really wish it showed a lot more like normal shields on other characters, because it can be deceiving to me to how much damage is actually on him at times. Like when I look at a Phoenix and I'm looking at diving, I'll hit him with damage, and it takes forever, it feels like, for that damage to show up.
Yeah.
Because it slides down.
And you know,
it's like, come on.
I would agree with you, except for the fact that his shield is his whole health bar. And I think that his shield would overlap his actual health, which would be the conflict.
And I don't want it. You're right. I don't want it. I don't want the visual, like, I don't want it showing up on that same bar. I want it to behave when you take damage, like other shields, where it shows up instantly.
Instead of kind of like trickles down, or depletes,
Yeah.
I guess is the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the way that sounds.
But I understand why they don't. You know, it gives it some flavor and whatnot. And, you know, I'll learn to live.
Yeah. So what were some of the other changes on Phoenix?
They reduced his movement speed at level 4 on Emergency Protocol, because, I'm sorry, trait movement speed every time, or sorry, not trait, gaining mounted movement speed every time your shield depletes is pretty busted.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Now they didn't nerf it nearly enough though. They only nerfed it 5%, so.
Yeah. Maybe it needs something along the lines of like it can only happen so often. And I think that would be pretty good. I don't even think they needed to touch the speed. I just think they needed to change the frequency. Because you can, your shield comes back in 5 seconds. You could have full speed for 5 seconds, take 1 damage, and have full speed again if you time it right. Though you're playing pretty risky at that point.
Yeah. I understand where they were coming from with this talent, right? It behaves almost exactly like Speed Demon on Diablo. Except that, you know, with Diablo, you're not getting stunned multiple times in that 5 seconds where you gain that movement speed. And you're just reapplying.
Yeah, it's almost like a better version of Speed Demon for Diablo. Because getting stunned and rooted is such a situational thing. Compared to where losing your shield is just... Yeah, that happens frequency. Which sounds like it would almost be a disadvantage. Because, oh no, I'm losing my shield, but you move so damn fast afterwards, like, it's hard to punish. And you have a warp out, like, that's a brutal combination.
Level 7, they reduced the slow on combat advantage, or the damage to slow targets, rather. And that's fine. You know, it was the most picked talent, and they want to bring it in line with others. Okay. Makes sense to me.
Yep, sure. And what were the changes?
Level 13.
To Planet Cracker? I didn't actually know that there was any changes.
Planet Cracker was just a small buff, a 3% buff.
Okay.
Or slightly less than 3% even. But at 13, he got a lot of changes. Reduced his auxiliary shield gain, thank God. You know?
What was it?
Now he only gains 15% of his basic damage dealt as a shield.
What did it used to be, 30?
20.
Okay.
But that's still a 25% nerf. Yeah. So, you know, get it. We'll take it where we can get it. Dampening field got actually increased. His spell armor got increased from 15 armor to 20. I think that's good. It makes him more situational. It makes Phoenix players, you know, think about what they need. And 15 spell armor probably didn't feel like much.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that.
Sure. See, when I played Phoenix, I actually don't go for the Plasma Cutter build. I have a lot more fun going for the auto attack build where you warp in and you get a kill and you warp out. Like, to me, that's a lot of fun to play. Though I feel as though it's busted and a little cheap. I feel a little sleazy when I do that. But it does kind of feel good to run in there and do it. Almost makes you feel like a Genji, how you zip in and zip out.
It's funny.
Except for Genji, I feel is a little harder to do than this guy.
Hey. Mm.
So, got any more thoughts on Fenix? What's your personal thought on Fenix?
I think he's strong. I think he's relatively easy to play and get value out of. But he's, he's definitely harder to master and maximize his value.
Sure. Okay. And just for the last part, what would you say is like a good counter to him, or a good partner as well? Like who pairs well and
Counter
who's
to
good
Fenix?
against? Yes.
I think Garrosh and Diablo are very strong against Fenix.
Why is that?
Well, just for the burst damage and CC that they can apply to him.
Okay. Yeah.
And I know Garrosh doesn't put out the numbers on him, but he puts out that like control.
Yeah. He does also get interrupted from his warp thing if you stun him.
I also like stitches into Fenix, and this is kind of my, me being a tank main coming out here, but I've played stitches in lane against several Fenix, and I feel very strong. You're constantly applying damage to him with your W. He's always got to be fearful of the hook, and you heal faster than he deals damage if you're doing it right.
Sure. As long as you're not taking the free damage from him.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. My personal, I still think, I haven't thought too much about pairings, but I definitely think that his counter is Varian. And the reason for that is because even if you don't go Colossal Smash at 13, you get a talent called Shattering Throw, and you can damn near take out his entire shield with hitting your 1 key or whatever key it's on at that point. Also, you...
See,
Go ahead.
I tried that in a couple matches, and I felt actually way more impactful with other general damage increases at that tier, with the charge increase actually.
Yeah, that's don't get me started on Varian, man. You know how I feel about this guy. He's a beast, man.
I guess I would say it's dependent on what you take at level 10. If you take the charge talent, I love going the percentage based damage at level 13.
I almost feel that you have to when you take Warbringer.
Yeah.
But Shattered Throw it's very good against Fenix because the shield, it does so much damage to the shield, so much damage, and then your auto attacks do 200% bonus damage to shields all the time. So even if you
I forgot about that.
Yep. So you can go Shattered Throw directly into a whatever your combo is, whether you like to do Lion's Fang and then charge in, or charge and do Lion Fang and taunt. However you want to do it, you can pretty much lock him down because Fenix is a pretty squishy hero. So that's my way of countering Fenix. When I see Fenix, I pretty much 100% of the time want to play Varian against him.
I also felt when I played it, I was having trouble getting the Shattering Throw off on him. It felt much easier just to charge him, and then his shields were gone anyway, probably because of the damage increase.
Yeah, but think about what you could accomplish if you hit him with the shield first. You can one-shot him with Colossal Smash, by the way.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. If you can get that off, absolutely. I just was always having trouble getting it in the right order just because he would stay out of range.
It does. It feels a little clunky because let's assume it's on your 1 key. You got to hit your 1 key while still moving forward. Then you have to charge him. Usually you have to taunt at this point because he's trying to warp away, and then your Lion Fang. But you're doing a lot of damage in the meantime. Your charge should take away the rest of the shield, and then your auto attacks and Lion's Fall and taunt, hopefully, if your team's following you up, should be a kill on Fenix every time. He's just too squishy.
Cool. So let's kind of move on. We've talked a lot about Fenix, and there's a lot of other heroes to cover.
Sure.
I think the biggest ones we need to talk about, since we are starting to run short on time for this bit, because we spent a lot of time here already.
Okay.
Hanzo got some general nerfs, specifically serrated arrows got a decent nerf, and I think that's fantastic. He actually has to play more strategically now, you know, on maps with a lot of camps. It's not just, oh, I'm going to take everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that feels good.
Sure. Haven't played Hanzo basically since his patch, so. But yeah, I'm sure that feels good. Don't actually see too many Hanzos doing that very well, taking the camps with that talent, because even though it is such a good talent, I feel as though a lot of times Hanzos will take that talent and then tell other people to get camps, which to me is pretty frustrating.
It's funny. I haven't seen that yet, but that's funny.
Yeah. That's annoying.
Gold, silver, bronze.
Gold,
that's what
silver,
we do.
bronze. But hey, we can make it better, slowly but surely.
Nova got big changes. Well, not big, but she got like her build switched up. So now they've buffed her Q build so to make her more of a sustained damage dealer, and nerfed her W to make it less appealing. If you're going to go for double tap at level 13, it increases the pinning shot charge cooldown by 2 seconds. So you can't do it quite as often, and you basically can't do it very often in team fight at all. I think this is a good change.
Yeah, 14 seconds, that's a punishing amount of time.
And then at 16, they nerfed slightly lethal decoy. Okay. They nerfed crippling shot. Again, I think that's good. The armor negation was feeling kind of annoying. And then they actually increased explosive rounds damage from 50 to 70%.
Yeah, that's
in
awesome.
the area of effect. So that it helps our wave clear. It increases our teamfight damage. I love these changes, but that's because I always kind of played the Q build after they reworked her.
Yeah, Q build's a lot of fun.
Tracer, general stat nerfs to bring her back down to where she was before the changes last week, or 2 weeks ago rather.
Yeah, Tracer should not be blowing you up anymore. Still a lot of damage, and you should be fearful because her auto attacks are up, but overall she's not going to destroy you in one little spurt.
Yeah. Slight reorganization for Varian in his health and health regen. So they buffed it to make C Smash Varian feel a little stronger, not so squishy, and they nerfed the taunt health and health regen. And I think these are good. You know, the taunt build was starting to really shine. And it felt frustrating to play against slightly. Not Fenix frustrating, but a little bit.
That's still a lot. 25% extra health and regen, and then 15% armor
It is a
on
lot.
top of it. That's a lot. Plus a 16-second silence. That's fast.
But at the same time, you know, having that little bit less makes the others more appealing, and especially down, you know, especially in our ranks, it makes Twin Blades and C Smash feel a little more appealing.
Sure. Yep. Both situational, I feel. You should not be taking Colossal Smash if you are a solo tank. You unfortunately need to take the silence, or else you're kind of doing your team a disadvantage because you've made yourself more squishy and easier to kill. Also without providing as much CC.
I agree in general, but I think making that a blanket statement is dangerous. Because there are comps where I'd like to just blow someone up, even if I am the main tank.
It might be more doable now that you have 20% extra health to work with C-Smash.
I think it wasn't quite that much. It was like
I'm pretty sure
5%.
it used to be max health was reduced by 30%.
Oh, well, they haven't. Yeah, his health still gets decreased, but
By 10% now. That's a big deal. That's a lot.
yeah.
That's one of those undercover ones, I would say.
And then the last really big change, I guess there were 10 changes, but the biggest change besides Phoenix in this patch was Sylvanas, that her abilities no longer disable structures. Now you have to auto attack a structure in order to turn it off. I think this is fantastic.
Yeah, really good change. Doesn't really change her kit too much. It just kind of strays her focus. She can't just cast stuff randomly and get value anymore. She has to be a good player. So you Sylvanas maids understand.
Yeah, and your damage stays the same, right? You can still hit the structures. It's just that you need to put yourself a little more in the line of fire to get value, and I like that. I think it's kind of where she needs to be.
I'd agree.
Yeah. Trying to look over the rest of these changes. Changes to Tyrael were pretty big. Increasing Ardent Restoration. Now it's actually a little more in line with Justice for All and with what's the other shield talent called? I can't remember. But this Ardent Restoration, if you can keep it stacked, actually provides quite a bit of healing now. It was a 10% buff. Before, the numbers just worked out that even if you had full stacks all the time, it wasn't healing you as much as either of the other two would. But now that's not true. If you can keep it fully stacked, it provides quite a bit of healing.
Yeah. It's 150 every 5 seconds. Oh, no, it's not.
Stalwart Angel changes increased the armor back to where it was, but they decreased the duration from 3 to 2 seconds after you teleport to Eldruin. I like this.
Yeah.
It makes Tyrael play more strategically. You know, he doesn't just have armor up all the time. I mean, he still kind of does, but you have to pick and choose your moment to teleport in the team fight, because that armor is going to fall off, and the enemy can wait for it.
Yeah, and in a team fight, that's pretty valuable.
Other buffs to Purge Evil, Burning Halo, and Smite the Wicked. I find these changes rather interesting, just because a lot of the pro teams, when the Tyrael rework happened, were actually using the Purge the Evil, Smite the Wicked build. So for these two to get buffs, surprises me. Because that build seemed pretty busted when I played it. But I guess the pick rate wasn't quite where Blizzard wanted it, and so they buffed him.
So they increased his auto attack build.
Yes.
Cool. I might have
It
to
is
give
no
him a
longer. Yeah, it's no longer 100%. You must take Holy Ground. I think if you're on maps like Cursed Hollow, like Sky Temple, Holy Ground is very impactful.
Yeah.
But it's no longer a must pick, especially on other battlegrounds. The game that I keep going back to is on Infernal Shrines when Dig played him, and it just felt like, you know, he never went for Holy Ground, but it felt like none of his teammates would die. He was doing tons of healing, dealing tons of damage. It was like having a mobile Zarya out there.
Yeah, he's like a bomb walking around. Like if you almost do wrong if you mess with him.
Mm-hmm. And also with Purge Evil, you no longer have to take the Reciprocate, because the damage is pretty similar. And then small changes to Zarya. Graviton Surge got a huge cooldown reduction from 80 to 60 seconds. So now it's a little more in line with Expulsion Zone.
Cool.
I think that's pretty interesting. Set up a few of those more common wombos with lower cooldown, ults, and abilities.
I personally like the expulsion zone to keep someone away from something for 45 seconds. But I'm a big zoner. I like to play the heroes that do zoning.
Yeah, well, I think this is actually nice with the current healers that are in the meta. You know, Alex, Malf, Stukov. These are characters that can put down area of effect abilities in that space, whereas Zarya puts down her Graviton Surge, and all of a sudden, oh look, you're not going anywhere, you can't do anything, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, it's a good ultimate. Like, to have someone locked down for 2.5 seconds in one spot, that's really good, especially when you get the wombo. But I do also really enjoy Expulsion Zone. It also slows them by their move speed by 50% for 1 second after they get knocked away.
And then I just want to go back and point out there were a couple changes to Chen, just so people don't, crucify me afterward. The Chen players, the Panda players out there.
Pandera.
Gaining armor on your Q quest is huge. Every time you ignite someone with your fire. Oh, that's not a Q quest, that's an E quest. They have mislabeled that.
Yeah, the kick would be really good though. So what, is it more of like a fire build these days?
Well, no, it's just I don't think the fire quest was being taken, so they wanted to buff it, give them a reason to pick it. And I think that's fair. I before was struggling to find reasons to take accumulating flame. So also they removed the cap on freshest ingredients, so you can keep gathering up the regen globes after you hit 30.
Nice. Which
also a good change.
I don't think the freshest ingredients is worth taking, being that Brewmaster's balance is so good.
Brewmaster's balance is in the same tier.
No, I know that, but if it automatically gives you healing when you're above 50%, what's the point of
why would you pound it? Yep.
Unless you really need to be alive. Like, freshest ingredients and Brewmaster would give you an insane amount of health regen. 18 plus whatever you gather.
And the last thing they did is they changed Purifying Brew so that it no longer falls off after a set amount of time. It falls off when the shields fall off. I think this is actually pretty huge with freshest ingredients, or I think that's the quest that allows your shields to only half fall off.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe there's some synergy there. Cool.
Yeah, I would say the best part of that level, that freshest ingredients quest, is definitely the persistent shield.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it for the patch notes. There were other minor changes to Haka, Leoric, and in both cases they were buffs. Same with Malf. Actually, Malf got nerfed slightly, and then Kharazim got buffs. So this is a good balance patch. Trying to bring characters in line. Get old characters back in. Get new characters that have been pretty oppressive kind of out and make way for others.
Sure.
So I like it.
Alright. Well, we
Cool.
wasted a lot of time in this, so let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. If you want to go ahead and introduce that, Chuck, I will pull it up for us.
Sounds good. So, today we want to kind of go through what drafting looks like and what the core elements of team comps are, or in our opinions should be. And if you ask both me and Steven, we will give you fairly different answers actually. For example, my draft style, I like 1 healer, 1 tank, and 1 DPS. then I like a bruiser slash solo laner, like someone that can survive in the solo lane, and then that flex, that flash for the team, whatever it may be. Often you need some kind of damage in that role or some kind of control.
Yeah, and I don't have an issue per se with the way Chuck does his things. It's just we see a little differently on how we do the teams. I prefer a safer play style compared to Chuck. I think has a little bit more of a flashy play style. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just the way we like to play, I suppose. So the way I recommend drafting is you obviously want your tank, and I think you want a good support. Preferably for me, I like the AoE supports like Lucio and Rhaegar. I think has pretty good supporting abilities. Those would, in my opinion, would be like the top two supports that you would want. Would be Lucio and Rhaegar. But I also like to have my full tank, and I still believe in the bruiser theory, like Sonya and Thrall and Dahaka. I think even Malthael plays a pretty good bruiser these days. Just some extra front line. Make them a little scared to dive your back line, because I like to go for the mage in the attack damage carry type play style. Have that sustained damage pumping out, and then have your burst damage to really put it on them.
So, Steven, did we want to go ahead and we did run one of these a little while back, just a mock draft to practice, and it was actually pretty interesting. And do you still have that, or should we
I do actually.
do a different one?
I have them up, but for time's sake, I don't know how well it's going to be to do it, because it takes a little while. But I definitely have both of our teams. If you want to put our teams up, we can draft them. I can link yours to you real quick, Chuck.
Okay. Can you show me either on our off screen or?
Yep, it's in your off screen.
Monday.
It's on.
I don't see it.
It should be on your Blizzard chat.
Oh, I don't have Blizzard open. Here we go.
But yeah, the way I like to draft, like I said, my team's a pretty old school style draft. I like when I draft, let's just assume that we have first pick, I usually will ban whatever's like the most meta pick.
Oh wow, this is a really old one.
Yeah, you can make yours however you're feeling then, but
Oh.
I usually like to get my tank and support out of the way when I draft first. So like if I were to pick a tank, I think Johanna is a pretty solid tank. She would be probably my first pick as far as tanks go. For this specific team, and this is for like just a standard map, not a huge map. I think we decided Tomb of the Spider Queen was the one that we liked this on. Am I right or am I wrong there?
This was for Cursed Hollow.
Right, Cursed Hollow. Yeah, still think this is a good team for Cursed Hollow, because you have so much going on right around the shrine there that you need a good front line that can take a beating, and I think Johanna does that really well. So my first pick is going to be Johanna.
Okay. Well, for my drafts, I prefer just in starting off, pick something that's safe for the meta, something that's not going to get super countered, and something that's generally strong. So in this one, I picked up Alarak. For some reason, I keep feeling like I was first pick in this one, so I just went with Alarak.
Okay. Well, that's fine. We'll assume Chuck was first pick, and he drafted Alarak. If I can find the fella.
Yeah, that's what this looks like to me when I look back at it.
Yeah, it is tough finding stuff on here. There he is. So, I'm pretty sure I picked up Johanna and Lucio for my first two picks. I wanted to get my tank and support out of the way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Then I went with actually Stitch's false stats, so let me bring those up here. So on Steven's side, we had oh man, why can't I find these? They need to be going in alphabetical order, I wish.
We're not doing the bans in this, by the way, just so everyone knows. It's just kind of open. Let's just assume everything's available. Obviously, things change. But
We're just kind of going through an old one.
Yeah, I think
so. There may have been bans, but we don't have them recorded.
Sure. I'm pretty sure the next phase, I like to get my bruiser, and also I like to tend to get for my mage here because nowadays there's so many good like attack damage people. But then again, you could say the same thing for vice versa. There's a lot of good mages out right now. So like what I pick up is I think Thrall's pretty solid. This was before his buff that I thought Thrall was pretty good. So I picked up Thrall, and I picked up Li Ming actually as my mage. That gives you good burst damage from the back. She's pretty safe with her teleport, and also puts out a good amount of damage. So that's the two I went with.
Cool. So then at this point in my draft, I am needing. I have my off lane, I have my tank, and I have my. Well, I actually have some interesting things here. All three of my characters can fit multiple roles. Falstad can be the main damage dealer, or he can be kind of that flex. Stitches, he can be main tank, or he can be kind of that off lane slash flex. Alarak, off laner flex. So what I need right now is a healer, and I need either damage or flex. So with this one, I was looking at it, and I said I can either go with a Brightwing and try and just control the map through globals, in which case I'd pick up another global like a Zagara. Or I could allow Falstad to be my global, my flashy character, and pick up an Uther and a Diablo. So I think in the end, I decided that Uther and Diablo give me a little more team fight, just because Brightwing would make my team all about the disengage, and I would never get anything done if a fight was forced.
Yeah, that's good. And I think here, as far as for me, this is where I usually pick up my range damage. So like I still think Zul'jin's pretty good, but I don't think he's anyone that you want in this comp between Diablo and Stitches, and even Alarak. That's a lot of trouble you can get yourself in. So I went with Vala actually, just for the vault, and she obviously puts out a lot of damage. Between Thrall and Johanna, that gives you pretty good front line, and Lucio for the good hard disengage. So I went with the older school style comp, at least in my opinion. What I think many people would agree is the safer comp. Not to say it's better per se, but it is a safer comp, I think. A little less flashy, less to mess up, in my opinion.
So you picked up Vala?
Yep.
Cool. So when I look at Steven's comp over here, on Cursed Hollow, that's super important. Let me put that up there. I see something I see a lot of squishies, and I see him being very dependent on Lucio's ult. So that makes Diablo and Stitches huge threats. And it also makes them they're the ones that are going to dictate these fights if I manage to stay away from Li Ming, Vala, and Thrall's poke. These are from a few patches ago, so the nuances of it are a little different, but the core concept stays the same. If Lucio panics ever, Diablo and Stitches are going to go in, deal a ton of damage, and wreck one person.
Hmm. Yeah, your
Uh,
catch is super good. If you guys catch us out, we'd be in a lot of trouble.
Alarak and Falstad, they have decent poke on the tributes. Same with Stitches, same with kind of same with Diablo. So I'm not super hurting there. Uh, but overall, this team comp on my side, it's all going to be based around finding one character and blowing them up either before Lucio gets his ult off or after making him panic and waste it.
Yeah, and I do like your draft, Chuck. I do think it's good, but I mean I've told you this before. My only thought with your comp is this: there's a lot to mess up here. It doesn't take much for your comp to fall apart within itself, in my opinion. Like if Stitches misses a hook or Alarak misses a combo, like that's a lot of CC you guys don't have anymore. Though you have Diablo and Uther, which is in itself a good combo. But I think you guys have a lot to mess up here that can be pretty punished here. Because if you don't get the Lucio in your Alarak combo and he gets the sound barrier off, that's tide turning. That's enough to get your whole backline ruined. With Johanna being in there just causing a muck, I think it causes you guys a lot of trouble. And again, that's why I think my comp's a little more simple. Excuse me. Just in the fact that our damage is there, and I feel as though our biggest mistake is mispositioning. I think would be the reason that we lose, but I think the reason we win isn't its simplicity and the amount of damage that we have.
So, by the way, guys, I just want to throw out here real quick. We're using a tool called Heroes Counters Team Picker, just so we're giving them some credit. I found this a couple months ago, and I love it.
It is
I
nice.
think it's very interesting to see what other people think on here, because you're able to upvote heroes, downvote them, give your input on who counters what, and it's pretty interesting. Obviously, because it's forum based, it's not super reliable in terms of, these numbers, like saying Genji is, well above other heroes like Chromie or Junkrat or, things like that aren't always applicable to every rank. But, if you take some of what they say with a grain of salt, it won't usually lead you astray.
Yeah. And the plus side about this is similar to what we're trying to accomplish in our new series. It's a community-based type thing. This is based off, like Chuck said, this is the community's votes and what the community thinks, and I think that's super powerful. Just to show different things, because sometimes we feel we all get caught up in win rate stats and different things like that, and that's not always what decides the games. Any team can beat any team if you play it correctly. So this helps. This is, in my opinion, a pretty good site as far as spreading a little bit of knowledge on drafts. I would recommend even running through some of your old drafts maybe and be like, man, I really think we should have won that game, and run it through here and see what happened and see what the player base thinks about your pick.
Okay, so Steven, do we want to do a quick real mock draft? Kind of with the limited time we have, or do we want to take a look at that one we had last month?
What about we get
Since
into
since it segues so nicely into ABATHUR.
The one we just ran?
No, there was the one last month where we had it segueing. It was either like an ABATHUR or Chromie last pick.
I don't remember. If you remember the team, I'm down for it.
I don't. That was the one I was looking. That was the one I had hoped you had saved.
For shame. Huh?
I had completely forgotten about the one you just brought up.
Yeah, maybe we'll just do the one we just brought
so
up.
long ago.
Um,
Okay. So, well,
let me see if I can even pull up the team for us on. Alright, so I have the draft actually pulled up.
Oh, you do?
The one that we just ran the other day. We ran this on the 14th. We have a small group that we play together, and we ran it. And
Oh, this one. Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna leave it on the screen. But the way we drafted, I think we prioritized Maev and Stukov first picks on Battlefield of Eternity. I'll run through the team real quick. So we did Maev, Garrosh, Stukov, Diva, and Lunara on our team. And the reason behind that is because I think it synergizes really well with the map. Like, between Garrosh and Maev, we had a lot of pull. We could pull them back on the objective to get stunned. Stukov is super good with these guys for that silence. Endless possibilities as far as counters go. Like, a couple times we did Maev Garrosh toss into Warden's Cage along with the Diva Bomb in the middle of it with the silence in there, and just wrecked the entire team on top of the objective. It was pretty crazy. It's a really solid comp if you're looking for something to run with your buddies.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you...
This is a quick match. This looks a lot like a quick match to me.
It was unranked.
Just because there's no...
We drafted this.
I do not believe that at all, just because this is on Battlefield of Eternity. And none of these characters... Oh, I guess Lunara is the only one that makes any sense on this map.
What do you mean you don't believe it?
I think this was in quick match.
No, it was unranked. We drafted this. We drafted it with Darth, Danny, and Alexis. Do you recollect, Chuck?
I'm trying.
It is, if you want to pull up your draft, it is 3 days ago on
Unranked draft, yeah it is.
Yep. So we drafted
That is crazy.
Because to me, that's a terrifying team to go up against. Really, really scary.
Our team is terrifying, absolutely, especially in team fights. I'm just surprised we didn't get punished for having almost 0 clear on the Immortal.
Well, that's why we drafted Lunara. Because this was a really good draft. This, in my opinion, was the best draft that you and I have coordinated with our little 5-main.
Yeah.
And I will say their team was a little odd. They had Diablo, Lieutenant Morales, Valeria, Gul'dan, and Cassia. Not a terrible team. A little clunky, but I feel as though this team works pretty well with most anybody. What do you think, Chuck?
Okay.
That's my opinion. Is a really good, solid team. If you're just looking for a good, even a quick match team to go against. I don't know what your thoughts are on a fun quick match team. Something that would be interesting and good to do with your buddies.
Yeah, I mean, if you are looking for a draft that's just, well synergized, I think this one is super strong, and you have a couple of places where you can swap out characters. Diva and Lunara are the most easy to swap out, just because there are other characters that do what they do. Lunara just deals that heavy sustained damage in an area. Also, they had no one to dive her, so she was able to be super safe. And then there was the Diva, who just, she's there literally for the Wombo blow up. And she's also a safe in the off lane.
Yep. It was a pretty good team that we ran. I was pretty satisfied with that team. Now I know we had a team. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to segue into our next spot because we, for whatever reason, don't have that team written down anymore. But along with the show, we also want to try doing something a little different where we kind of help people understand heroes a little bit better, and we're actually going to do that alphabetically, just for simplicity's sake. It'll keep us organized. It'll help you guys understand a little bit better. Easy to check up. So, like our first hero is it's ABATHUR. Now, ABATHUR is a pretty complex hero for most people, for anyone really. He is very hard to play. It requires a lot of skill and a lot of map knowledge. I would personally definitely not recommend this to a new player.
See, I'm not so sure. I think if you're going into um, quick match, if you got a buddy that wants you, if you're new and a buddy that wants you to jump straight into AI, ABATHUR is an easy enough way to actually see how the maps work, how the game works,
Yeah.
right? Because you can go do your own thing, and for the most part, you will usually get value no matter what, and it's hard for you to die.
If you play correctly, that's the toughest part, because you don't actually play with your body. It's the hardest part of ABATHUR. You do, because you got to soak lanes, right? You got to get your XP somehow, and the best way to do that as ABATHUR is to be present in the lane, but you have to do that carefully. If you get yourself caught, you're basically in a stasis. You're in a spot of wherever you put your symbiote on someone. You pretty much just wrap up in a cocoon, and you're in that spot for however long until you cancel out of it. And you have a very, very tiny health pool with no escape moves.
So one thing, speaking of ABATHUR's first ability is his Q ability. One thing I see a lot of people doing is they will stick to a character for a long period of time. 8, 10, 15 seconds. That's not how you get the most value out of ABATHUR, because he does only have a 5-second cooldown on his Q. It really is best for you to just get on a target, throw out all your abilities. Most of the time, not every time, but most of the time, just throw out all your abilities and get off. Because your shield will recharge faster, and unless you talent into the lowered cooldown on your W, on your spines, those will recharge faster as well if you get off someone and immediately get back on.
It also helps
It also allows you to get in a rhythm of putting down your toxic nests.
Yep. Which is your mines, basically. That's spawn, and they do a couple good things. They do a little bit of damage, which is nice. They reveal people, which is also really nice. And that's kind of the main thing that I personally think mines are good for, is put them in spots where you think people are going to rotate. It helps your team, because your team is down a body. It's normally 5-on-5, and yes, you have the hat to help your team out, but essentially it is a 4-on-5 with the hat. So having that will help your team be a little more aware. If they pay attention to the mini-map, they'll kind of see where people are and what they're looking to do, where they're looking to go.
Yeah. So make sure when you're playing ABATHUR, get in this rhythm of looking at your mini-map a lot more than on any other character, because that's where you're going to get the most information. Getting your hat on people, getting all your abilities, and getting off quick. This includes on minions too. That's how you clear minion waves fastest. And also getting your mines down each time you come off your symbiote. Those are the biggest things for in general playing ABATHUR.
Yeah.
After that, you want to make sure that your body soaking when it's safe. You put your body near a minion wave and then go use your symbiote to clear other waves to help your team, because your body being near a minion wave will actually naturally clear that wave over time. Just make sure, watch on your minimap, and you know where the enemy team is, because that's something I'm super guilty of, is neglecting my body, and then all of a sudden someone finds me in a bush and oh look.
Which
Free feed.
Yep, a good telltale with ABATHUR is your trait actually will sometimes give you away, because it spawns a locust every 15 seconds, which will help you push lanes. It's a pretty nice tool, but if you're hiding in a bush and someone's there soaking the lane along with you and they see your locust strain come out of the bush, they're pretty much going to dive on top of you, and you are a pretty slow little slug. You move at normal speed, but that's still pretty slow for most people. You have no escape, so you can get killed pretty easy. I think you start the game off with like a 700 health points. Am I wrong?
I couldn't tell you. It's very low.
You have a super low health pool. And the heroics, we'll get into the heroics. So there's 2 heroics on ABATHUR. Both I feel are are pretty decent. You can get value out of. Kind of just depends on your play style. The way I personally like to do it is if I'm building split push, I will actually go Ultimate Evolution, which is the one where you clone your teammate. Like, so say you have a gray main, you can clone your gray main, and you have 20% increased spell power, 20% basic attack damage, and you have 10% increased movement speed. So you're basically like a superior version of whoever you copy, and it gives them that fifth body in the team fight, along with making your body disappear. So sometimes if you're in trouble, you could pop your Ultimate Evolution and save yourself from a cheap death because they spotted your Locust Strain in the bush.
I'm actually kind of different from Steven in this regard, where I think you use ABATHUR to accent whatever you're looking to do. So if I'm looking to use ABATHUR for team fighting, I'm going Ultimate Evolution. If I'm using him to split push, then I'm going to go Evolve Monstrosity.
Yeah, and here's my theory behind that while we're talking about that, was the reason is because if I put so much into split push, I'm lacking in the team fight, so Ultimate Evolution will help with that. Whereas I'm going for the team fight, I'm not necessarily doing my job of split pushing, and that's why I like to go Evolve Monstrosity. Because if I got my hat, if I build hat, I want to be in hat form, where Ultimate Evolution, you don't get to have your hat on someone.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely see that. I think that's, personally, I just think that's kind of, you're trying to be slightly above average in everything, where I think it's fine for ABATHUR to be an average lane soaker and split pusher and a super strong team fight character, or a menace to deal with in pushing, and okay, he helps out his team. You know, so that's kind of my 2 cents on it. Now, in general, playing with ABATHUR and against ABATHUR, one thing you gotta know is that, you know, just kind of moving on to talking about game flow and understanding how the character plays out in the broad sense, ABATHUR teams are going to feel like they can't do anything early on. So if you're with an ABATHUR comp, be comfortable giving up objectives until you hit about level 10. Once you hit level 10, right, you lose that disadvantage of having only 4 people in team fights. You lose that you know, feel of being overwhelmed every time you see an enemy. And that's when you can go in and contest.
Yeah, and again,
this is also why ABATHUR is good on maps where you kind of have to fight over an objective, where it's harder to leave.
Yeah, I think the reason for that, and why ABATHUR is good on objective maps, like we'll say Cursed Hollow, for example, is like when you're playing ABATHUR on Cursed Hollow, and you're on the ABATHUR team, I think that your job is kind of to just delay that as long as you can and let ABATHUR get value somewhere else, similar to what you would do with like a different specialist. Like if you have a Sylvanas pushing, you're going to want to delay the objective, right? Let your Sylvanas get as much value as possible. It's the same thing with ABATHUR, except for you're not going to get push in the beginning. You want to get soak. You want to win the soak game. And that's, I think, how you win with ABATHUR, is if you can get a good level lead on people.
So that actually kind of brings us to talking about what ABATHUR builds are good. Oh, well, what are the typical ABATHUR builds? I think there are 2 predominant ones, and they're mostly, you know, I think of ABATHUR as having 2 halves of his build. The first half is, if you're going for team fight, you know, you can go for, say, Pressurized Glance, lowering the cooldown on your W, getting bonus attack speed, giving bonus attack speed to your symbiote host. If they're a strong auto attack character, and then at level 7, usually it's going to be Needle Spine in that case.
Sure. Um, one of our subscribers in chat actually asked us. He said, "This may be a strange question, but why are the Vikings countered by ABATHUR?" He said, "I played a couple of games as the Lost Vikings, and I have Abby on my hero pool." So I think the reason that the Lost Vikings beat ABATHUR is because they have a little bit of a better early game uh, push on them, as far as like their presence is a little better than what ABATHUR can put out, being that there's 3 bodies, where at most ABATHUR can only really soak 2 lanes. The Lost Vikings can soak all 3 lanes.
The Lost Vikings also, they make their team comp this kind of like, they make their team want to be this oppressive team fight monster in the early game where they're just going around and they're getting picks and they're getting kills, and it feels impossible to lane against that team. Because if you step out of line, you're gonna get dead. So it basically makes that early game, which is all about the laning, the XP soak, feel even worse.
Yeah. I would agree. It's a similar, in my opinion, it's a similar concept. I like to think of the Lost Vikings as almost like a siege camp or a night camp. They're not spectacular, right? They're not gonna, like, they're easy to kill, is the best way I can describe it. You can kill them really easy and get rid of them, but if you leave them alone, they're gonna get a ton of value. If you leave Eric alone with his, which one is it? There's one of his, there it is. It's a sabotage. Eric's attacks are stronger against structures. If you leave Eric alone to just do nonsense to your towers, he's gonna get your tower. He's easy to kill, and that's where I think the difference between ABATHUR and the Lost Vikings is the Lost Vikings to me are almost like camps. They're easy to deal with if you're there, but if you're not there, they're going to get a lot of value. Whereas ABATHUR, he doesn't necessarily have to be there to get the same value.
So you're gonna have to remind me. I think I got, when I was here in reverse, you were saying Vikings are a counter to ABATHUR, yes?
Yes, that was his question.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me, because, well, it makes sense. But the other half of me says, you know, if as an ABATHUR team you can keep up with the Vikings somehow, it would require some big misplays. But if you're keeping up in the mid game mostly, and you're not too pushed in, ABATHUR's ability to make his team fight so much stronger. You know, ABATHUR makes his team fight well 5v5 with Ultimate Evolution. Now all of a sudden you make that a 5v4, I think it becomes really hard for the Vikings to secure the win.
Yeah, I think they both have their strengths and weaknesses, for sure.
It's really hard. Basically, the Vikings are just going to make that game either really short, or they're going to take forever to lose. You know, they're going to win in an 8-minute game.
Well, I think with
a
ABATHUR,
10-minute game,
they're
going to take forever.
The difference between like ABATHUR and the Lost Viking playstyle is, you pretty much have to get to level 10 with ABATHUR. Is where the Lost Vikings, you don't. The Lost Vikings are there to get you to level 10. You know what I mean? Where you have to kind of rely on your team to get you to level 10 to do the right things, and that's why. Although ABATHUR can be very good in a really good player's hands, I think he is very low tier, and a lot of people will be upset if you pick him because it's just, he is so hard to play with. If you can't play with him correctly, it's almost, I don't want to say guaranteed, but it's pretty strong that you're going to lose, just because ABATHUR, unfortunately, is just he's a little, what's the word I'm looking for, like, a little below the rest, I guess, is the only way I can really describe it. He's not quite up to par with what some of the other people bring to the table.
So I disagree. I think he's just as good as most of the other characters out there. The biggest problem he has is that tilt factor. You know, the team starts losing, and it is 100% ABATHUR's fault, and everyone starts flaming. Yeah. And then they start playing bad too. they start playing bad, and you know, ABATHUR can't carry you until the late game.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah, it's too difficult right at the beginning.
It's,
So
so a lot of people start saying, "Oh, we're down by a level. We're down by 2 levels. We've lost 3 objectives in a row. How can we win?" Well, we wait till level 10 and we get those big team fight wins at clutch times.
yeah, and I think that's why I personally don't necessarily enjoy playing with ABATHUR because, and the meta where it is now is so easy to fall behind, and it's so difficult to come back. And if you get behind on ABATHUR and your team is tilted and you can't get caught up, you're stuck in a downhill fight, or an uphill fight, I mean, and that is a little painful for most people.
So it just occurred to me, we got 100% distracted. We were going over builds and maps.
Hey, he asked the question and we are responsive, so.
we went way in depth there. But but as far as builds go, you're gonna have that team fight in the first three talents, or you can go for big time split push in the first 3 talents, which mostly means getting control of the map with their mines. And the mine build is just Envenom Nest, Ballista Spores, and Vile Nest to just really make the enemy feel like they can't move anywhere safely. The last thing you can do is get regenerative microbes at level 1, which makes you kind of a healer for your team to make up for certain healers' lack of sustained heals. I like this one, and it combines well with sustained carapace at level 4, which means that they don't lose that heal when you leave your host.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then you're also free to take whatever you want at level 7, because just honestly, in my opinion, networked carapace doesn't get the same value unless you really want to just split push all the time.
Yeah,
in which case, network carapace is amazing.
It's really good. Network carapace is super good with sustained carapace, where it persists after leaving your symbiote. You can hat almost every lane. It's pretty absurd. Just think of them as all having an extra tower shot absorbed. That's a big deal.
Yep.
Okay. Moving on to the next part would be the win rate in ABATHUR. As of hot logs, not a perfect system, as many of us know, is only sitting at a 43.9% win rate, actually down 0.7% this week. So below him is Chen and Tassadar. Wah wah. Chen is down 5% since his rework check, or his change.
I think this goes back to, that tilt factor. It also goes slightly back to it's just how it, I don't know. It somewhat speaks to the mobility in the game right now. It's really hard for ABATHUR to get out in the lane and feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's Genji floating around, there's Stealthies floating around, Tracer, any of these high mobility targets that can lock ABATHUR down. Well, you don't even need to lock him down, just burst him down, because it doesn't take that much, and so you lose out on a lot of value because you have to play scared.
Yep, I would say ABATHUR is in a tough spot personally, but we will keep trucking along because it's not about whether we think he's good or bad. It's about the hero itself. So we'll move on to the next part and we'll go with talent builds. Chuck, if you want to do the team fight build, I can cover the split push build that I like to run.
Okay. So when I have a team that I need to team fight with, say like I have an Illidan on my team that I need to hat, or a Tracer or a Genji, these high damage, high annoyance kind of characters, I go for pressurized glands or regenerative microbes, depending on what the hat target needs. If we need more healing, if we need more sustained healing, regenerative microbes, you can't go wrong. Otherwise, pressurized glands is really good. It helps you clear lanes, it helps you deal damage in team fights, all that good stuff, jazz. If there's a reason to go adrenal overload, meaning if you have a character that deals high auto attack damage, either because they have high high damage per hit or high attack speed, Adrenal Overload is huge. You know, increasing that attack speed by 25%. That's a lot. If you don't, Ballista Spores is a great way to control the map, give your team information.
I actually find a lot of value of Adrenal Overload with when I have a Karazim on my team for that extra punching heals.
Yes. 100%. I agree. At level 7, Needle Spine, for the most part. The only other one I would look at, really, is Call Down Mule. And really, I would look at that on mostly on Sky Temple. Also on Infernal Shrines.
What about Blackheart's Bay?
I do not look at it on Blackheart's Bay, simply because the cannons kill the fort in its entirety when they hit. When they go off, they kill the fort.
Okay.
Like, I suppose if you launched it right as... No, because the explosion from the cannon would kill the mule.
Well,
so no.
I was thinking if, like, you have your cannons up and your well, they'll target those first, and if, like, 2 shots get on your keep, I'm pretty sure it lives, but I could be wrong. I don't play Blackheart's Bay enough.
It actually doesn't, just because the first time the cannon launches at the mule target, the mule dies. So either the thing is at full health. So how do I say this most efficiently? When Blackheart's Bay is firing, it goes after towers, walls, and wells first. Okay, so for a mule to get value, the thing that it's healing already has to be damaged. So you can't preemptively launch it on Towers of, or not on Towers of Doom, on Blackheart's Bay, because whatever you're trying to heal, it'll go there and it'll get killed by the cannonball. If something's already damaged, yes, you can get value between cannons firing, but at that point you're just minimizing what the enemy team has already done by pushing by force.
Sure. So it's just,
right?
It's not that you don't get value, it's just you can get more value on that map with another talent, is what you're saying.
Yeah, Call Down Mule is better for mitigating damage done by objectives rather than damage done by heroes.
Sure. Okay. Alright, Chuck, what do you think for level 10?
Level 10, I seldom see a reason to go Evolve Monstrosity, just because a hero with 25% bonus spell power, 25% attack speed, and 10% movement speed is huge.
It's actually 20% spell and attack speed, just to clarify.
Yeah, well, 10% bonus movement speed.
Yes.
Yeah. So, if you have a good target for that, it's amazing. Now, if you have no good target for that, I know sometimes that happens, either because someone's already dead, or someone's dying a lot, so, someone's just inting. Evolve Monstrosity can't help you recover in games where you're falling behind. It can help you recover very easily. It has a long cooldown, though. And so if you... It forces you to pay attention to the map a lot more, because if you leave it and it dies, it can lose its value very quickly. So it's basically just a matter of how vigilant are you at watching the map. If you can keep track of your monstrosity while still helping your team and getting maximum benefit out of everything, Evolve Monstrosity does great. But if you are somewhat neglectful, either because you're always on your monstrosity, or because you're always on your team, one of those two is gonna lose out. If so that may have been confusing. If you're always on your monstrosity, your team's gonna lose out on you. If you're always on your team, your monstrosity is gonna die. So you lose out on that cooldown. moving on, just because I beat that dead horse enough. At level 13, Soma Transference is amazing for team fight. It does so much healing. If you went for the stab at level 7, Needle Spine, that's really the only time I would really go for spatial efficiency. And even then, you need to know that your team is safe as far as their health is concerned. Level 16, this one's always hard for me. All of these talents are good, minus maybe Volatile Mutation. I don't like it. I think Envenom Spikes is good, especially with characters that have the damage bonus for hitting slow targets. Like Muradin, give him the axe is amazing. With Envenom Spines, you turn Muradin into an absolute monster.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal.
Adrenaline Boost is good. And also, Locust Brood is good just for, if your team doesn't need that extra help, I have no problem using Locust Brood even if I'm going to team fight build.
Yeah.
And then the last one, team fight, always go for Hive Mind. Like, it's just amazing.
It's really good. It's really good.
You literally double your effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Very few other characters have that, where everything about the character gets boosted by 100%.
It actually does not, though. It only does half damage and shielding. The Mimic.
Okay, 50%.
So
maybe that's not quite as much.
Bonus.
But you do still get all of the bonuses from your talents. So increased Soma Transference healing, increased sustained care, or not sustained care, just regenerative microbes healing. Increased range and damage from your stab.
Mm-hmm. It's good.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a snowbally team. Or not snowbally, but like a clumping team.
Mm-hmm. I would use these builds on maps like Infernal Shrines, where you basically have to team fight. You can't give up every single objective. So the enemy team, and that's more true of the late game. That's why I like it on Infernal Shrines. It's a map where the early game objectives are easier to give up, and the late game ones are more punishing, which is where ABATHUR excels.
I like the pun you made.
God dang it! I didn't even think about that.
I'm with it.
God dang it! Now you thrown me off.
Sorry, it was just so good.
Sky Temple is very similar. You can give up a few objectives, especially with Call Down Mule. If your team can do a good job of holding off the enemies and preventing them from completely destroying forts. Because the objective attacks the forts directly.
Okay.
You could give up 3, 4, 5 entire objectives and still have all 3 forts and all 3 keeps standing at the end of the game. Where else do I like to team fight build? What are our maps? Let me pull them up. Battlefield of Eternity. I don't always like ABATHUR here, but I would say you have to go team fight build just because split pushing is so hard on that map. I
would disagree. I'll get into that later, though.
It's easy. I think it's easy for a team to back off and defend their immortal, while or a team that's against an ABATHUR to send 4 people defend their immortal, and have a 5th go deal with the ABATHUR. Because it's still a 4-on-4 if ABATHUR's splitting.
Sure.
Because he's doing his own thing in the off lane, and then ABATHUR does transition quicker back to the team, but it's only by a little bit, and you can handle that.
Yeah. Okay.
Pretty easily. Again, Blackheart's Bay. Blackheart's Bay is such a weird map. I'm not going to comment on Blackheart's Bay. I don't like it.
Okay.
Brax's Holdout, I think Teamfight is strong here. Because this is a map all about rotations and getting that good Teamfight when you want it. Cursed Hollow, I don't know if Teamfight's as good on Cursed Hollow. But you know, the Teamfight build is always more or less effective. Dragon Chariot's good because you have those fights and you have a lot of rotations on those two cap points in top and bot. So it's very easy for ABATHUR to transition between the lanes and to go to a lane opposite of what's being pushed, what's being contested.
Okay. All right.
I don't like it on Haunted Mines. I like it on Sky Temple for reasons I've already said. I don't like ABATHUR in general on Tomb of the Spider Queen just because it's such a small map and it's so hard for him to get value out of his split push, out of his body soak.
Yeah.
Towers of Doom, I think the team fight is probably the stronger build. Just because whatever you split push usually gets taken back pretty easily, but if you win fights convincingly, and there are fights pretty often on this map, you can get enough value.
Sure.
On Volskaya and Warhead, I don't think the team fight build is as good. It's too easy on these maps to back off and allow the clone target to die.
All right.
And re-engage later.
Alright, well, when I play ABATHUR, I usually like to play split push build. I don't play ABATHUR too often because I don't play him that well, but I do like to do it. I have like a couple different split push builds, but I'll go with my shielding split push build because I do think it's really good. So, I usually like to go for the regenerative microbes, but I don't do it so much when I'm looking to strictly split push. I will go for survival instincts. The extra health and duration is pretty good for the split push there. At level 4, I like to go for Sustained Carapace, which increases the shield amount by 40%, and it allows it to persist at the end. That's one of the big parts, is that it persists at the end, because that pairs well with your level 7 talent, which is Network Carapace. So using the Carapace also applies a untalented shield to all nearby allies and minions. Allies, heroes, minions, and mercenaries. So that's pretty good. You can pretty much shield an entire wave, which is really nice. And then at level 10, it gets a little different here. Like I was telling Chuck earlier, Ultimate Evolution I do think is really good, and it's actually the one I mainly go for when I'm split pushing super hard, just because I hate leaving my team. Like, it bothers me a lot to not be helping my team. So I will usually go Ultimate Evolution just to give them that extra body at important times. Like, for example, Curse Hollow, when that curse comes up, it's pretty important that you be there. So I pop my Ultimate Evolution usually early on in the fight, get them pressured off. But if it's a bigger map like Warhead Junction, I will usually go Evolved Monstrosity, just because you can get so much value out of that as the map opens up. And not only that, you can put your hat on top of it and control it, and then it becomes almost like your fifth body. Once you get it stacked up, it's pretty nasty the amount of damage that thing can put out. At level 13, I actually like both of the strains here. The Assault strain I usually will do if it's a melee heavy comp, because the explosion is really good. That 102 damage, it does stack up by level 13. It does a lot of damage when it explodes, and it hits people by surprise, and a lot of melee people don't have an option but to get in there to kill it. So I will go that usually for melee, and then any other standard team I'll go for Bombarding strain, because that siege damage is super good. It does a lot of damage. At 16, I will usually go Locust Brood if the map's big enough, because then I can dance around the map, you know, tunnel in, put my Locust Brood down, hearth out, move somewhere else, tunnel somewhere else, put one down. But also, Chuck said he didn't like it, but I actually like Volatile Mutation. Every 3 seconds it puffs out 137 damage at level 1, so it does scale up. And when you die, so it's pretty good for either ultimate, I think. Like if you use your Ultimate Evolution and you clone a tank, I think Volatile Mutation is really good because you get mad value out of it. But at the same time, if you use your Evolved Monstrosity, that's extra wave clear on it, which is pretty good.
See, I'm not. I like that. I guess on Evolved Monstrosity, I could see it more.
Yeah.
But with Ultimate Evolution, I feel like to get value out of it, wouldn't you have to clone like a Blaze?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Something that won't die
Yeah. It would not be...
to ever get any value?
Yeah, it's not something that I would recommend if you're going to go Ultimate Evolution, because, you, like Chuck said, you don't get as much value, but you get a lot of value out of it with Evolved Monstrosity. The Locust Brood, I would still say, is a little bit above that, because that gives you extra split push. It lets you go in, drop them down, get your trade off, Hearth out, and have 4 extra Locusts mid whatever lane if you're pushing top lane. And then at level 20, I pretty much always go for a Locust Nest. You can trick a lot of people, and that gives a lot of extra map pressure. That keeps the pressure on their side of the map. So I go for a pretty split push heavy build there, and that's how I like to play ABATHUR. I like to control the map with my specialist. That's my favorite thing to do. With my build though, it's definitely a dance around the map type build. It's about being everywhere at once on ABATHUR, but that's the way I like to play him.
Coolio. Well, I guess the last thing really to discuss about ABATHUR is just how, when, and why do you draft him? Draft him on maps where he's going to be strong and where he complements your team. So if you're going to Warhead Junction, for example, and you've already got a Zagara, you probably don't need a split push ABATHUR, eh?
I would agree.
The Zagara's got that covered. But if you're going to... I think he's always good on Sky Temple, honestly.
Okay.
But if you're going to Sky Temple and your team needs just that little extra oomph, you know, you've already got all of your other bases covered, ABATHUR can be quite good.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll say... Well, actually, I was going to say you need to pick him late in draft, but you absolutely don't. ABATHUR can be a good surprise pick late in draft, especially if your team already has a lot of, you know, the bases covered. You know, you've already got a tank, heal, and damage. But ABATHUR's also good enough, in my opinion, to be picked up early in the draft, so long as your team knows, and they know kind of what the game plan is.
Which is, I think, the hardest part, is making sure your team understands how to play with ABATHUR. It's not... The thing about ABATHUR is that it's not usually the ABATHUR is why you're losing. As long as you know what you're doing. Like, if you're doing the proper things, you're putting your body in lane, and you're spreading your stuff around, and you're hatting people when they need it and stuff. But, like, if your team's out there fighting 4v5 all the time, which happens a lot, unfortunately, especially in bronze and silver, not so much in gold, but still in gold, then you run into trouble. You don't quite get the value I think you would normally.
Yeah, I think I need to qualify that it's not the ABATHUR player's fault. It's 100% ABATHUR's fault, but it's not your fault as the player.
Yeah. And that's what goes with any character. As long as you're doing your job, there's only so much that you can do. There are 4 other players on your team and 5 that are against you, so the game won't be handed to you.
Aye.
All right, well,
And then the last thing when it comes to the draft is just, you know, when you're in that draft, please, you know, do make sure your team knows, you know, if you can give them just a quick warning, hey, guys, we're going to need, you know, try and identify what objectives you will need to give up. So on Sky Temple, say, hey, don't get greedy, don't go for 2 temples at first. If we need to back off and give them both, that's fine. We'll have the mule, or we'll have the team fight later. Whatever works to calm your team down.
Yep. I think when you pick ABATHUR, it's kind of your job to keep the team cool.
Yeah.
You'll do more typing.
Yeah. and you're the one that can see everything because you're never focused on one thing.
Yep. Definitely not a hero for tunnel visioned people, in my opinion. He's not going to accomplish what you want to accomplish.
Yeah. If you're real good at micro and you're just dominating the 1v1s, but you get ganked a lot or something like that, it's going to be hard for you to transition into playing ABATHUR. Whereas if you're a player that's good at the macro and looking at the map and knowing where to go, what to do, ABATHUR might feel pretty good in your hands.
Yep. Either way, try him out, guys. It's always fun to try out new characters. If he's about, try him out, see what you think. Go to AI first, get a feel for it. Don't jump into quick match. You will die. Your team will not be happy with you.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about it for today's episode. Please do drop some questions for us, whatever questions you have in the YouTube, or come by and we'll link our Discord channel in the video description. Come by, discuss, ask questions there.
Yeah.
We hope to see you guys next week, where we will be discussing Alarak.
Is he next? Yep, Alarak. Cool.
Yes, he is.
So he is free this week, guys. Try him out so we can have a good discussion
try him out
about
in
it.
advance so we can have, yeah.
All right.
And we'll see you all next week. Thanks very much for watching, Gal.
Bye, guys.